All right, folks, it's time for us to finally talk about titles. We've been talking about it all semester, but let's go ahead and lay some things out about what to expect for titles. First off, the most important thing that your title should do is provide information, giving the reader an accurate preview of what's to come in your paper. Some examples of titles that really clearly indicate what's coming. Paradise Lost. It's about losing paradise. The Hunger Games. It's about people playing a game in which basically starvation is a given. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Let's just list out all of the major components of the paper or the book, C.S. Lewis. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, that one cracks me up because you may not know what Pride and Prejudice is, but if you know the history and you just add zombies to it, you know what to expect. Fight Club, it's literally about a fight club. And here, we don't even have to wonder what's going to happen. It's a murder on the Orient Express. All of these things are very clearly telling us what it's about. For longer works and academic articles, you may even want to refer to keywords related to your topic. This will help databases make sense of your paper if it's something that you end up doing. Some examples, Judith Butler's Gender, Trouble, Feminism, and Subversion of Identity. There's a bunch of gender, feminism, identity. All of those are keywords that could help identify that article. The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism by Max Webb. I think that one has a lot of those kinds of keywords there. And so these are all some examples of things to expect. For creative works, the title can be used to create a landmark or center point which pulls everything together. If some of your points don't seem to cohere except in your own head, finding that perfect title might help. Some examples that I thought of as I was looking through these, The Invisible Man, that becomes kind of a metaphor that pulls that whole book together. Educated, that theme of education is something that she sort of had to, I think, pull out and polish together. Eat, Pray, Love, that book would have been a disaster if she hadn't created an organization based on these three different nouns, or I guess verbs: eat, pray, and love. Those different ideas are an anchor which pulls everything together in that book. You also need to work for a hook. What is this? It's grabbing your reader's attention and hooking their interest, convincing them to read. This is probably the most expected part of a title. But how do you do it? Well, here's some ideas. One way is to provoke a question, to build tension and mystery from the beginning. So some examples that I found that I thought were really great, mysterious or questionable kinds of titles. Stories I Only Tell My Friends. Ooh, that's definitely one you want to lean into to hear. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That's a Philip K. Dick story. Do androids dream of electric sheep? Well, I guess we'll find out. Who could that be at this hour? It's a question that gets answered by Lemony Snicket. Gone Girl. Well, what does that mean? That's a book that's all about a girl being gone, but what does that really mean? And then finally, As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. We don't really expect a dying or dead person to be a narrator, and yet in that book, it is. Similarly, you can create a kind of conflict with your hook, some sort of paradox or hyperbole that sort of gets your reader's attention. David Sedaris, his book Me Talk Pretty One Day is probably one of my favorite titles ever because it's a book and yet he gives all of this bad grammar right at the beginning. The Gifts of War is another title that pulls you in because it seems to be paradoxical or unexpected. The Horse and His Boy, rather than the boy and his horse. It's a flip of our expectation, and so that pulls people in. Another thing you can do is simply create some conflict by poking a bear. What does that mean? Well, it means actually kind of making people feel uncomfortable with their titles. Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Idiot by Al Franken. Killing Jesus by Bill O'Reilly. Not Gay, Sex Between Straight White Men. All of these. Oh, I'm glad my mom died. Every time I see that, I laugh. So here are some things where you kind of are poking the bear. You're actually stirring up conflict. Another way that you can hook an audience is to use symbolic language and imagery to convey a lot of information through a single phrase. The Catcher in the Rye is an example of this sort of metaphorical title. Their eyes were watching God. Another imagery-based title. 1,000 Splendid Suns. Fahrenheit 451, that's a metaphor because that's apparently the temperature at which paper burns. And then The Jungle, which is not actually about a jungle, but about a factory, the way that factories were run in the olden days. The thing is, though, if you're going to take some of a sort of a symbolic sort of hook for your title, you gotta make it clear enough that your reader isn't actually unsure what you're going to be writing about. So these are all books that I actually like and I've read, but I think that the titles may have caused them problems because, like, Constant Gardener by John le Carre, what is that actually about? It's actually not about a gardener at all. Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption by Stephen King. They shortened it for the movie to Shawshank Redemption, but I think even the movie itself didn't do as well as it could have because of the title. And then The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I love that book, and The Remains of the Day is a beautiful title, but it's also sort of it doesn't really make sense to an audience who isn't maybe clear of what that means, and so it could be kind of off-putting to some audiences. Another hook that you can do is just make them laugh. This is actually best accomplished by knowing your audience and understanding their sense of humor. Some of my favorite funny titles: Bossy Pants by Tina Fey, that's a great one. The Girl with the Lower Back Tattoo by Amy Schumer. I found this one, On the John, a devotional for men, which cracks me up. And of course, the classic Go the F to Sleep. It's a children's book that I adore. You can also reference famous quotations or phrases in your title. Something that Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury is a reference to a Shakespeare play. Are You There, Vodka? It's Me, Chelsea references Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is from a children's nursery rhyme. Slouching Towards Bethlehem refers to a William Butler Yeats poem, and The Dying of the Light refers to a poem about death. So those are all some important or some useful examples. Another way to hook is to use wordplay and puns. The importance of being earnest. The word earnest, both in terms of earnest quality as a person, where you are really super true to yourself, you don't have any sarcasm in the way that you are, but it's also a name, Ernest, so it has a double play there. Wishful Drinking Instead of Wishful Thinking by Carrie Fisher. And even the classic Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. It's a full series, but it's also a series as in the number of events that are happening, so it's a pretty good one. Another way to hook is to actually go into your essay and search for a memorable or meaningful turn of phrase or maybe a repeated word. That might be a good title for you. So if you look at some movies, "Good Morning Vietnam," he says that over and over, and of course that becomes the title of the thing. Same thing with Back to the Future. The scientist guy says, you gotta go back to the future. That became the title. All of these are examples of titles that were pulled from the actual text. Another quality besides the hook that you need to work on with your title is concision, or being concise. Almost always shorter is better. And in fact, one-word titles are popular right now. Educated by Tara Westover, Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, The Road by Cormac McCarthy, Outlander, which is such a great title for that series of books because it's one word, but it encompasses so much of what happens in that series. But sometimes long titles can work if you know what you're doing. I love The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night, Alexander and the Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. All of these are good examples, and part of what each of these is doing is intentionally pushing against the limits of the length of a title. You can also have it both ways by using a subtitle. So Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, they have a subtitle that's The Nice and Accurate Prophecies of Agnes Nutter, but we also could call it just plain Good Omens. Quiet is one-word title, but you have a subtitle saying The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And then I Am Malala has a really long title, and what's neat about this one is that she actually gives you information about who she is and what the book's about in the subtitle. Academic titles tend to be longer and sometimes even sentence length, but even academic journals will put word limits on titles. So here's an article, The Educational Benefits Claimed for Physical Education and School Support and Academic Review. I'll skip down to Criticizing Local Color, Innovative Conformity in Kate Chopin's Short Fiction. Longer is more expected in academic writing. There are other things you can do to work on your titles. Oops. You can run it by someone else, see how it works on someone else, run it by me, run it by a friend. Audiences always can help you know if it's working. Another thing you can do is look at titles by similar works on the same topic. That can give you some ideas about what works and maybe what to avoid. And in the end, with your title, you want to be true to yourself and your story. If you come up with the most adorable title, but it has nothing to do with you or your story, it's not a good title. So in the end, it's about communicating your story and doing it well. Happy titling!